that just doesn't enjoy, being up at night.
Like you said, it's just like if you set your alarm every morning for 6 a.m. After 2 weeks, you won't need that alarm. You'll just wake up.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know about those things. All I know is that I worked there for 2 years and it wasn't fun. It's kind of like an abusive relationship, You think you'd eventually get used to it, but you never do. Yeah. Isabel, anything you want to talk about today? Yeah. You?
We could talk about contentment, because I know that you were talking about happiness last time, and you never got to the topic of contentment. So I'm just wondering, is contentment happiness? Like, if you're discontent with the way your life is.
Why do you guys ask such difficult questions? Contentment. You have 5 very, 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 very powerful portals or windows. Your eyes, your nose, your tongue, your touch, and your ears. It may be that you just went to Zachary's and had a large deep dish all by yourself. And you're about to puke. And as you walk past by Barney's, and they have great burgers, and the aroma is everywhere. I mean, you should be happy, you should be content, but your nose has the power to create temptations. And with every temptation comes imagination. If only I had had 2 slices of pizza instead of 25, maybe I could, get a burger and some fries, curly and steak. And you realize that as long as your 5 senses are fully operational, and as long as they're functioning relatively healthy, the truth is they're always a source of guilt and unhappiness, hello Sarah, and discontentment. Because the truth is you want more. And the reason why you want more is because, imagine that I am your boyfriend, let's just say. Okay. The truth is, Zamir may have qualities I don't have, and you find those qualities to be interesting in him. And it's not that you want to have an affair, it's not that you want to cheat, but the truth is, there is something about some of the qualities that he may have that inspire you to say, well, I wonder what it means to be this way, or I wonder how it feels to have that. And so you pursue it. Now, it may be that Kayla may come to you and say, what is wrong with you? You're with Amir, it's a great relationship. Why would you want to put that in jeopardy? And the truth is, you want to put it in jeopardy because we are pleasure-driven animals. And if you examine the anatomy of pleasure, you'll discover that inside the world of pleasure lives beauty. Beauty.
But pleasure and happiness.
Pleasure and happiness are siblings. Hello. Oh, it's okay, don't worry. I suppose I could say it to you in this way. After about 30 some odd years of being in the classroom, I'd probably be happy retiring. Now, it doesn't mean that in retirement I'll be happy or I'll have pleasure. It just means that after 30 some odd years of being in the classroom, I am content. I've talked enough. I've seen enough students. I've read enough. I've been to enough meetings. The stage is nice, but it did what it could for me for the past like 30 some odd years. I can leave it with relative contentment. Now, whether or not what waits after me will be the source of pleasure or happiness or contentment, that's something that needs to be unfolded for me as I move into it. But for me to speak about retirement and to be okay with retirement and to be happy with my decision to retire, it took about 35 years to reach. Because you sit in your office, you say, you know what, I'm going to prepare my today's lecture, and I'm going to write a book, and I'm going to go to this meeting. I'm just driven to do these things. There comes a point where you say, you know what, I'm not interested in ideas anymore. I'm not interested in talking about these ideas. I don't want to move up the ladder and become an administrator. I just want to walk away. And you realize that, well, for happiness, it took about 30 years to get there. Pleasure, now you can sit in your office and watch YouTube, and it gives you enough pleasure. There is also, now, you can have pleasure without being happy. But if you're happy, there's a good amount of pleasure in it. It's like when you're in a committed relationship, sex comes with it. Okay? But just because you have sex, it doesn't mean you're in a committed relationship. All right? Now, the problem with pleasure, if it's not rooted in a purpose or a goal that has longevity, is, smoking can give you pleasure, lots of pleasure. But the tragic part of smoking could lead to addiction. There is no pleasure or happiness in addiction. There's just, struggle to overcome it. You could gain a lot of pleasure by watching porn. I had a student many years ago. He started watching porn from the age 12. By the time he got to my class, he was 18. By the time he finished my class, he was like 21, 22. He went to San Francisco. One day he comes to my office from San Francisco State, and he says to me, I like this girl. I think I love her. My only problem is I've been addicted to porn for like 10 years. And I only see her as a piece of meat. I don't want to, but I don't think I have any other options. And you realize that if pleasure is rooted in something that could potentially be unhealthy, addiction can be developed, and then the pleasure that could be the source of joy, possibly even happiness, can lead to some disastrous conclusions. Okay. Relationships, for those of us who've been there, long-term relationships, most of it is just struggle. Maybe an hour of the day, you can have a good amount of pleasure sitting, having food together, but most of it really is just tough, okay? And then let's say you get to be 60 or 70. You've been together with this person for about like 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Lots of ups and downs. And as you wrestle with the issues, your skin grows thicker. Psychologically, you become stronger. Emotionally, you're able to handle, life's complexities. And then at the age of like 50 or 60, you can walk with your companion around the lake and say nothing to each other. But it's a place of contentment and happiness. Now, the thing about happiness you need to understand is it doesn't mean that you're going to get pleasure out of happiness. In other words, if I am your father and I have cancer stage 5 or 6 or 10 or 20, and I'm in a lot of pain, and you and I have had a great relationship, you're going to be by my bedside and you're going to be taking care of me. Now, watching your father, the person you love, be in pain is not going to be a source of joy or happiness. But what makes this scenario so valuable, even happy for you, is here you are, you're willing to sacrifice a few days off of work, a few days off of class, a few days off of your family to come and take care of your father. It makes you proud. You get a chance to see your own compassion, your generosity, the fact that you're able to sacrifice your life to take care of an old man who's dying in pain. You know, and then you can sit back, and when I die and you bury me, you know, your kids are now 19 or 20, you say to them, you know, my father, I did A, B, C, D. He says, Dad, wasn't that like a sad occasion? And you say, yes, it was very, very sad, but I'm so happy I could be there for him. And it's a very strange thing. And you realize that when we talk about happiness, you're talking about 10, 15, 20 years, or maybe a few months or a few weeks of intense struggle, intense focus to accomplish something that you think is profoundly valuable. And that becomes your sundae, the cherry on the top. You go through all this maze, all this path, you struggle, lots of pain. In the end, you find yourself to be happy. In happiness, you sit back and you say, this is a good place to be. You know. Consider that episode in one of the Gospels. I think it's like Gospel of Matthew. You know, where he's on the cross, he's nailed. I mean, it's a miserable place to be, you know. And you have Jesus in pain, blood is everywhere, and he says, into thy hands I commit my spirit. How could you be content with death? It's because you realized at the age of 12 you were unhappy, you went on this long journey, you discovered God or truth or whatever that he found. You come back and you preach for a number of years, and then you realize, well, it was good to talk to people, but they're a little stupid, so maybe my job is done. You know, you experiment and you try with all these different things, and every time you reach a conclusion, when you reach a conclusion and you're happy with that conclusion becomes a component of contentment. You know, it's like, I've smoked enough in my life. I want to, you know, do something different with my life. I've been a hippie long enough. I've lived in Yosemite and I want to go back to school. You know, I've been single. And you realize every time you walk into a different stage in life, you leave the previous stage with a good amount of understanding. And that understanding becomes your Sabbath, a place of rest. You're not going to go back and visit it again. The other thing I would say about happiness is I don't really know what it is. In Chinese philosophy, there are 4 types of people. One is made of earth. They're very grounded and solid. One is made of water. They're just very passive and creative. One is made of air. And you know, if you have wings and you want to fly all the time, the truth is, down here is no good for you. And then you have another that's made of fire. So you have 4 very, very different kinds of temperaments. If you want to get married or have a girlfriend or boyfriend in the future, my recommendation is spend like maybe 6-7 months trying to figure out these different elements and make sure your companion, if you're made of water, if that's your temperament, do not get together with someone who's made of fire, because they will destroy you. You want someone who can hold you, allow you to kind of be free flow. So the point I was making with that is the following. These 4 groups of people are going to be happy in very, very different ways. If, for example, someone is made of fire, chaos is part of who and what they are. They're just always in the business of creating and destroying. That's how they get themselves off. Okay? Someone who's made of water, they don't like conflict. Okay, they will always con or are clever enough to kind of maneuver around the obstacles. Someone who's made of air is like Jesus Christ. I don't care about Israel. I don't care about the house of God. I just know that the kingdom of God lives inside me, not outside of me. It has nothing to do with like tables and chairs of life. And you realize that someone who's made of air is always going to be restless. And it doesn't matter if you give him a Tesla or a Benz or a Honda. If you give him a family, 10 kids, 20 kids, no kids, it makes no difference. Someone who's made of air is always going to be unhappy. And so your question about how does one become happy or how does one become content, it really depends on, they contain so many moving parts. And if you look at our history for the past many hundreds, if not thousands of years, everybody has come up with a different philosophy of life. My recommendation would be the following. Some of us are very lucky in the sense that you're a Magnus Carlsen. At the age of 4, you just know that your love affair is not going to be with a woman, it's going to be with chess. If you happen to be Alex Honnold, the climber, if you've never seen his solo climb, El Capitan, you should watch it. It's amazing. You know, no protective gears, no rope, nothing. He just climbs this like flat wall up. And his girlfriend, you know, she asked him, you know, next time you want to do something so dangerous, can you not talk with me at least to make sure I'm okay? And he says, no, I don't want to talk to you. You know. If you're not like an Alex Honnold, if you're not like a Magnus Carlsen, the truth is, you just got to like walk around the earth for the next like 30, 40, 50, 60 years. One day sit, have a good amount of regret for having wasted a good amount of time, health, vitality, and then ask yourself, what the hell have I done with my life? And then trying to figure out something that can bring a decent amount of joy before you die. And most of us kind of fall in that category. We don't really know what the hell we're doing. We don't, you know, our parents really didn't educate us. And even if they themselves were educated, if you have listened or read the story of Prodigal Son, people don't receive advice. You know, most of us have to go out there, bang our head against the wall, get all bloodied and bruised to learn a lesson or two. The other thing you can do, Fook, if you don't want to do this on your own and you know that you're not a genius, you like me, Fook? Do you like the ideas you talk about in class?
Yeah, I kind of really interesting.
So here's your shortcut. How old are you? You're a kid. You have lots of energy. Consider me to be a billboard. I mean, that's what life is. It offers you all these pieces of advertisements. And the function of advertisement is quite simple. To tempt you. I mean, imagine like you've been trying to get yourself off of weed. Now you're driving down the highway and there is this huge billboard. Now here you are for the past like 10 weeks struggling to overcome your addiction to smoking weed. And there is the billboard. It only has one function. To make sure you remain an addict. That's what the world does. It's there to kind of tempt you into things it wants you to be tempted. I am here to tempt you. If you were to give me your life for about 10 years, you would have a PhD in philosophy or humanities or religious studies. Before you're 30, you will be done. Then you can go interview for jobs, and then you'll be teaching. Now, whether or not you'll be a good teacher, who the hell knows? That's a shot in the dark. You walk in the classroom, And as Rumi would say, you open your mouth to talk to your students, your breath will either be of ice, where people will fall asleep, will get bored, will be disgusted, disappointed, depressed, where they want to hang themselves from the ceiling in your class because you're so goddamn bad as an instructor, or your breath will be made of fire, filled with a lot of passion and excitement, that even if students want to sit back and be bored, they find themselves that they can't. Now, here's the thing. Temptation by itself is not enough. Coming to class twice a week for an hour and 10 minutes, that's nothing. I gotta manipulate you, coerce you, brainwash you, and hope that you will fall into the trap. There is this beautiful poem, I think you've heard of it. باید گرفتارم شوی تا که گرفتارت شوم از جان و دل یارم شوی تا عاشق زارت شوم من نیستم چون دیگران بازیچه بازیگران اول به دام آرم تو را وانگه خریدارت شوم. In Iran we had flat roofs, and there came a point where all the kids in the street, and that's how it was way back then, you have this huge long street and you were friends with like the entire neighborhood. Anyone who had kids, they would just go through the roofs and, bang on the rooftop and everybody would come out. And so we would create these cages for pigeons. We would trap them. And you knew that if you opened the cage, the pigeons would fly away and they would never come back. So we would keep them trapped and give them food for 2-3 weeks. And what you realize is that you make them comfortable. You domesticate them. See, right now you're not domesticated. After class, you think about this and then you think about that. So your brain and your mind is kind of wild, it goes all over the place. It's like a prostitute, right? Once you become domesticated, who owns you? Well, I do, right? You can go anywhere, but eventually you're going to come back to the place that has given you comfort. And that's what the pigeons did. At a certain point, you open the cage door, they fly out, they go wherever. A few hours later, they're back in the cage. And so, the thing we talked about the other day, which is, you do schooling, then you do teaching, and then you get to be my age, 65. And then you say, life is shit. But that's like 35 years of being in the classroom. That's a long period of being happy, getting pleasure, some struggle here and there, but for the most part, it's been good. And then you walk into a different stage of life. And the truth is, and Jesse and I will tell you, and any one of us in this class who have some age, there was an actress, her name was, I think, Betty Davis. You know what he had said? Old age is not for sissies. And once you get a little older, you realize Plato is useless, and so is Jesus Christ. Your Jesus Christ at the age of 65 or 70 is Kaiser. Not the Bible, Kaiser. And you realize that yes, you lived a certain stage in your life being in a classroom. You left it with a good amount of happiness and contentment. But now you walk into a world unknown to you. What does retirement look like? What does it mean to have lost a good amount of vitality and agility? What does it mean to go to Kaiser? Like once or twice a week. What do you do when you come back home and all you talk about is your Alzheimer's or your whatever? And the conversation changes, meaning changes, and it's going to take a long time for you to adjust. One of the, I suppose, best paintings that I've come across is Thomas Cole's Voyage of Life. 4 paintings. And the real contentment that you'll get is in the last painting, which is called Old Age. This old man no longer has any hair, his beard is white, he no longer stands on this boat, he sits The water is very, very calm. There are a couple of openings in the sky, and there are these angels coming down. And there is no other place to go. There is nothing else to do. The old man is ready to be taken either to heaven or hell. You know, he's lived his life. So, good luck.
What it sounds to me is like two types of contentment. One is like you've done enough of this and you're happy, and the other is like you're content, but then temptation gets you, you're curious about getting exposed to. So would you say that like for the second type, if you have never seen a thing, if you've never like been exposed to it, would you still be content?
If you've never been exposed to it, yeah. My mom and my dad, they've been married for like 70 years. You know, and in our culture, you can't divorce. You're shunned by society. That is a no option, unless it's a really, really abusive relationship. You know, we don't have therapists, at least we didn't have when I was growing up. We don't have a language for depression. It was mostly philosophical and spiritual. Everyday life is just a struggle, man. You survive it. The idea that, you know, I'm not getting what I deserve in life. Well, no, you don't deserve anything. You know. Hello. Now, in our community, nobody had affairs. The idea of crossing certain lines, it just didn't exist. Men and women, they never mingle. It just is a part of like a 3,000, 4,000 year tradition. And so when we go to gatherings, for example, when we used to, men spoke to men, sat with men, and women sat with women and spoke with women. Now, the moment you're exposed to a different type of an environment where men sit with women and women sit with men, there are a couple of things you need to understand. And again, those of us who've been in long-term relationships will tell you, every long-term relationship, there is a point where you realize that you really don't have much to talk about anymore. Now, it doesn't mean you want to leave the relationship. It just means those exciting periods where you used to write poems for your companion, buy flowers, and have exciting conversations for hours, that's no longer in play. You know, I'm not an infinite well of creativity, and neither is my wife. At a certain point, you're sitting around the table having food, you look at her, she looks at you, she says, let's talk about something. And you say, no, I don't want to talk to you. There's nothing to talk about. I'm tired of rewinding and replaying the same old nonsense. Just leave me alone. You know, and these are like just unspoken truths in relationship. At a certain point, the husband does what the husband does, and the wife does what the wife does. Okay? Which means that there is this element of I am being held hostage by the boredom in my relationship. And one of the things you need to understand about boredom in relationship is that your husband or your wife no longer sees you, appreciates you, respects you, wants to have a conversation with you. And do you know how it feels? Next time you come to this class, make sure you come with a good amount of questions. And don't just ask your question, raise your hand. And when your hand is raised, I will dismiss you. I won't call on you. And just examine how it feels to be invisible, to be dismissed. It's not a good feeling. Now, what is interesting for people in long-term relationship is that, at least it used to be, is that, well, you have kids. The kids are a great source of distraction. Mortgage, another great source of distraction. The fact that you have a crappy boss and you have to gossip about your experience with your, your experience with your boss, with your wife, another great source of distraction. TV, another great source of distraction. Okay? My brother goes to my parents' house twice a day. They live 5 minutes from each other. Every time he goes, he stays there for about 1 hour. When he goes home, his wife says, how are the parents? They gossip about my parents for the next 5 hours. And you know what that does? Instead of him looking at his wife and asking, honey, are you happy? Or she looking at him and saying, honey, are you happy? What's the answer? Of course he's miserable. Of course she is miserable. But you don't even go close to those questions. Why is your mom? Is she okay? How's the cancer going? How's your dad? Is he slipping some more or some less? What's going on? And you realize the conversation does not revolve around them, okay? Now, when you change some of the cultural components and now men sit with women and women sit with men, what's going to happen? Oh yeah, there's a guy who's now seeing me, listening to me, paying attention to me. How could you not like that? Of course you like it. And then your husband goes away for business work, something. And then you're just bored and you remember how it felt. You know, when this guy looked at you and you Google his name and you find his name and his phone number and you text him. And he is as miserable as you are. He texts you back. And then you meet at Pete's Coffee. And then while having coffee, he says, I'll be right back, I have to go to the bathroom. And she says, no, I have to go to the bathroom. And then he comes up with this great plan. Well, let's go to the bathroom together. And they do. So, if you're not exposed, you're not tempted. If you're not tempted, your imagination is not at play. Then you don't think about it. You have no emotions about it. And your life, for the most part, remains safe. My sister's son, she's got 2 kids. One Armand, the other is Kiana. They're both in Cleveland dental school because my sister's a pharmacist. Her husband is a dentist. And so Armand, the son, came to my class this past summer with his friend Joseph, who's also wanting to become a dentist. My sister calls me after 2 days and says, Armand wants to come and sit in your class again. Can you tell him not to? Why? You know, Amir, dental school is expensive. We are immigrants. His school is almost finished. He comes to your class and he's asking all these questions. He says, maybe I should change my major to whatever. Can you just not do that? Just tell him that class is canceled. I said, sure. Now, prior to him coming to my class, I mean, he's been to my classes before, but now, you know, he's like a 24-year-old man. At different stages, your intellectual life is slightly different. You become curious about different things. And he was tempted. And what my sister is saying, I don't want you to tempt my son anymore. Do not expose him to a different lifestyle. And I think she was very wise to give me a call. You know? So, the only thing I would say is, if you know, I mean, look, if you know that you've been an alcoholic and you want to quit drinking, you just, right now, are far too weak to continue to hang out with your friends who are still drinking and smoking and partying. You're not strong enough yet. You know? It's kind of like, you have to be in the boxing ring in 2 months, and you need some training, like 5-6 hours a day. You can't just jump into the ring and fight Mike Tyson. It doesn't work that way. So what happens is, before you actually walk into the social space, knowing full well it's a place of temptation, you need some training, which means that you sit your ass in your room, you read the dialogues of Plato for about 5 hours, 10 hours, or you read the Gospels. And you go to church every Sunday for about 10 years. Once you've been fully infected by Plato and Jesus Christ, then you can walk into society. And just in case you get tempted, that temptation comes with a good amount of guilt. And you need that guilt. That guilt is like a condom for your soul. Leah.
Why is it that humans are the only species in the animal kingdom that can deny their purpose. You have like male tarantulas. When they die because the female will kill them. You also have male praying mantises. When they also die. Same thing for bees, but they all go towards their fate. There's like no question about it. But humans, we deny our own biology. We have our own separate identities and personalities that can conflict with our own biology. So why is it that humans, I guess, were given the ability to do this, but not, say, other animals?
We follow our purpose and instincts for the first, I don't know, maybe 5-6 months of our life. Do you have children, Leah? They suck. You should never have them. But all that aside, for those of you who have children, my apologies. They're great people. You should have more of them. They have no shame in them. They have no guilt in them. They don't need to go to church and repent. They walk around naked. They pee on you. They pee on the sofa. When they're hungry, they scream, and it doesn't really matter for them what you're doing or how exhausted you are. When they're in pain, they cry. They're not like what Freud had argued. They don't have any repression. They don't repress anything. They don't suppress anything. They're free. But the truth is, we are not the sort of organisms that can be around that particular freedom for too long of a time. And the reason is, we are social animals. We have no choice but to create communities of people. We need to be domesticated, Leah. Domestication means that you have to give up some of your freedoms. It means that you have to be conditioned. You have to be socialized. Who socializes you, Leah? Certainly not you. Now, you may have been wild before coming to this class, but if you want to ask questions, you can't just jump in and just say what you need to say. You need to raise your hand. And that rewires you, reprograms you, conditions you. Parents do a good job, media does a good job, religion does a good job, society does a good job. And then you're able to live in society. And you know what society gives you, Leah, because of what it has taken from you. Society eventually gives you a job, and that job gives you money, and that money will buy you a house. And that house will create for you a home, and that home will be a place of comfort. But for you to get to that conclusion, comfort, you have to struggle for about 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And it may be so that at end up 50, 60 years, you may come to realize that it was all wrong. I mean, one of the things about the death of the salesman, have you read the book? Death of a Salesman. I forget the main character's name. You know, one of the things that he says near the end is, you know, my parents told me to go to the bathroom whenever I want to pee, and I did. They told me to go to school, and I did. They told me no sex before marriage, okay. They said marriage, I said okay. Have children, I said okay. Get a job, I said okay. Save your money and buy a house, I said okay. And I did all of this for one reason. Because they said if you do all of this stuff, you'll be happy. I'm not happy. Why? I did everything you guys asked. I allowed myself to be domesticated by all of you, and I'm miserable. So we are very, very different than the cows and the camels that you're speaking of. We are a completely different category of species. Our instinctual abilities are stolen from us, or maybe they just kind of diminish after 6 or 7 months. You know, we grow attached to our parents. You need training for the first 20 years or so to figure out how to live in a very complex social environment. And the other thing, Leah, you don't have a purpose, and neither do I. It's a shot in the dark. The injustice of life is it creates a Magnus Carlsen. It creates a Mahatma Gandhi. It creates a Malcolm X. It creates a Jesus Christ. The rest of us, you have to follow these people. And you better pray to God that you are interested in Gandhi. Because Gandhi's ideas will carry you for the next 40, 50, 60 years of your life. I mean, Gandhi gives you purpose. Malcolm gives you purpose. Snoop Dogg can give you purpose as well, but it's just a shitty purpose. You know, and that's the thing. Lions don't need to be given purpose. You know, it's inside them. You know, you hunt a deer, you choke them to death, you know, you tear them apart, you eat them. No need to go to church and say, why can't I be a vegetarian? It doesn't work that way. We are filled with guilt and shame and repressed emotions. You know, we are the only animals that seek justice and write about justice and think about justice the way that we do. Let me give you an example, Leah, may I? You know, you go to a coffee shop and you just say you're single. And there are two women. One is very attractive, the other is very ugly. I should go towards who, Leah? Which one? The ugly or attractive? I want to be the animal that I am, Leah. Don't give me this high-powered philosophy of life. I should walk towards which one? See? You know the answer. The one who's like a Porsche, not like a truck. But what do you do? And I just want to have sex with her. Let's just be frank and honest. I want to fuck her. But no, that's too raw. You know, let's be a bit more mature, a bit more evolved. I want to make love. And just in case it's just a hit and run, oh no, why make me feel bad? I really just went to her to screw her. That's all. My pleasure is finished. I am content and I want to walk away. Every goddamn person in society makes me feel bad for what I've done. I did justice to my organism. It wanted, it pursued, it obtained, content, walks away. But for some reason, that's not enough for us. Your own organism is a thing that punishes you. I see my parents being together for 60 years. I don't even need to read the Bible or Plato. The very fact that I can't hold a relationship more than 6 months makes me feel bad. The very fact that I get old and I don't know how to deal with old age, and I don't know what to do with being alone and lonely and miserable and depressed. We don't have a purpose, Leah. I don't know if there's a God. I don't know if the Old or the New Testament, the Quran, were actually like historical books. People who were actually like in the presence of God and came down and gave those things to us. Maybe these were just unhappy, miserable little animals, came to realize that the tables and chairs of life is not enough, so they just went somewhere. And they were creative. They were like Shakespeare. They could sit and write for hours. And the rest of us sit and read these books and say, wow, I didn't know I had wings. I lived in the kingdom of God. Down here, I've been expelled. Jesse and then Zamir.
Every culture has like stories about external forces that influence us, like angels and demons and spiritual beings. You think that's like a sort of like an excuse or an escape hatch to sort of give us give form or like a control mechanism for to create some sort of structure for society?
There are a couple of things to your question. I won't be able to approach it the right way. A couple of things. Some Zen Buddhists in Japan, at a certain point, they leave their monastery and they live, I suppose, their city life, and they go into the woods for, 3-4 weeks. And they fast. They don't drink water and they don't have any food. And it's because when your body is not nourished, you begin to hallucinate. And when you begin to hallucinate, you begin to see angels and demons. And so you take that experience to your monastery, to your students or your teachers, and you tell them what you experienced. There is something about us that has the potential and the creativity to create things that don't really exist. There was a book some years ago, I forget the name of the book. It was about this nun. From a very young age, she had visions of Jesus Christ. Around the age 30, 35, she began having migraine headaches to the point that she could no longer tolerate them. So she went to Kaiser in Oakland and they did an MRI and they realized that she has a tumor. And so they got together with her and they said, a couple of things. The way this tumor is situated is pushing against the visual part of your cortex, your brain. We could remove it, but there's a good chance that you will no longer have visions. Or you could continue to have visions until the tumor kills you. Which one would you want? Now the nun sits back and says, I'm a nun. I have this faith and I believe in Jesus Christ. I love Jesus Christ. It has nothing to do with my tumor. God shows me these images. So she has a surgery, the tumor is out, the visions stop. And then she sits back and says, could it be possible that all the experiences were simply because this particular tumor was pushing itself against this particular part of the brain, giving me this idea or these visions? When you begin to ask those questions, you sit back and you say, wow, 30 years of being a nun, it's all been a fake. So you know what she does? Suicide. She kills herself. I think if you were to take the Moses approach, If you've seen the movie Ten Commandments, Charlton Heston, you guys know who he is? Do you guys even know what movie I'm talking about? Oh my God.
I remember that movie, but I haven't seen
This is like Twilight Zone.
it.
How could you guys not know what that movie is?
What is it called?
The Ten Commandments.
Oh, I know what the movie is.
Oh. Have you guys seen Sound of Music?
Yes.
Thank God for that.
Seen Left Behind.
The what?
Left Behind.
Yeah, but Sound of Music. Anyways, so there's a scene in the movie, and I don't actually know if it's in the Bible, the Old Testament, where Moses comes to realize he doesn't have the blood of Pharaoh in him. He's in fact a Hebrew. And they keep telling him about this, like God. And Moses says, I don't know what God you guys are talking about. If there is a God, I need to see it for myself. I need to touch it. I need to feel it. You know, just because you say so, it doesn't mean it exists. So the difficulty with your question, at least one of the components of your question is, you know, we create this very complex and elaborate world of mythology. You know, Gaia becomes the earth and Uranus becomes the sky. And the earth and the sky get together. They mate. And they create the heavens. You know, I think people are interested in astrology or numerology or palm reading. We are desperate in finding some sort of meaning to our life. It's quite pathetic.
And it's funny, like how they all clash, you know, like how, like, you know, the Bible talks about idolatry and how, you know, like those other type of beliefs are like minuscule and shouldn't be used.
Yeah.
You believe in God and God alone, you know.
I mean, consider the trick
Dabble in those type of things.
that the Jews played on themselves. We are the chosen people. 8 billion people on this planet. Let's just be generous. 10 million Jews. And out of 8 billion, God has only chosen 10. I mean, that's beautiful. Beautiful. I mean, that's what we do as human beings. We create meaning because we have no choice. You know, it's just, it doesn't sit well with us, Leah, to have sex without meaning. To know that we have, in fact, potential. In fact, we gravitate towards hurting people. That, in fact, we enjoy causing pain. I mean, Malcolm X and his idea of house slave and field slave. I mean, he used the N-word, but I won't. You know, it's an interesting phenomenon. We are so desperate for meaning, for purpose, for belonging, for comfort, for security, that you adopt a meaning that's alien to you. It doesn't even exist in your culture or tradition, but you will purchase it. And we are really quite vile. Tasha, yes.
In the book of Job, he had
Yeah.
to be tested to see if his moral integrity was strong. He had to be tested. Why is it that humans have to test themselves, like spiritual masters have to fast for 30 days, or, you know, to like the eagles of shells that can be cracked?
So before we talk about the book of Job, Job, they're the same, don't worry. It is perhaps the oldest book of the Old Testament, and by no means is it original. You can find stories very much like it in the Sumerian tradition. Genesis, the creation story, nothing original about that. And so, one of the things, again, you need to remember about these old ancient stories is that you could look at these stories as literal, that this is only unique to Jews or Christians or Muslims or Hindus, or you could say, you know what, these stories are metaphorical. You know, they're speaking about doors, but it's not like a physical door. You know, when they speak about like the kingdom of God, I know what a kingdom looks like, right? But the kingdom of God within, you know, so you say, well, where within? Should I look inside my shirt? You know, should I do like a heart surgery? Where do I go? And you realize language all of a sudden becomes very colorful. It can have a literal meaning. It can also have a metaphorical meaning. It's like you drive down the street and you say, fuck! But your kids are sitting next to you. Mom, what's going on? Look at that sunset. It's beautiful. And the truth is, there is nothing profane about what you just said. Because there is no other language you could use to express what an awesome scene you're witnessing. The sun is setting, the glow in the sky. You know, or someone is driving, all of a sudden their head just is banged on the steering wheel and the car is like, stop. They just had a stroke. And you panic. And in your moment of panic, you use the F word. And again, there is nothing. Or you're in the bedroom with your companion and you say, F me, F me, F me. It's a moment of passion. It may be raw. But what other people don't see is that you feel so comfortable, you know, with your companion. And it's a moment of profound, you know, it's sacred. So, the first thing you need to understand is the following about the book of Job, without going any further, is that, I mean, look, when you were 19, as a young, attractive woman, you go somewhere and there are tons of men out there, but one captures your interest. Every man out there looks at you and is tempted by your attractiveness. You, on the other hand, dismiss all of them except one. You have all these people down here, but God pays attention only to one person. That's an amazing thing. Talk about bias. Talk about prejudice. That millions of people are down here walking around aimlessly or purposelessly, right? And yet God doesn't care about any of them. In one, he sees something. What he sees, I don't know. Now that's connected directly to the word education, which means to bring out. Okay? Let's say that you got married to your husband. Beautiful man. Life got tough. He started drinking. You have access to a husband who was once sober, healthy, beautiful. You now have access to another husband, same man, okay, who is now a drunk and abusive. Okay. You take him to a therapist shop, AA, Bible. Why? Because you know the healthy husband is held hostage by a drunk husband. You want to set him free. You want to educate him to bring that goodness out of him. Okay? So remember, the task of education is to bring out a potential that has been hidden or crushed or forgotten. So just in case next time someone tells you that God has no biases, no prejudices, he's open-minded, wrong. Okay? God sees all these women and says, you know what? I'm going to sleep with Mary. I'm going to get Mary pregnant. and I'm going to have Jesus go inside Mary. Okay? So the first thing that you need to do when you read the book of Job is to say, wow, Job must be a very, very interesting man because of all the people there. God is only interested in him. Now here's the other thing. There is also Satan. 8 billion people on this planet. Satan cares very little for you, or for me, or for him. Satan is only interested in Job. I mean, think about that for a moment. One man is attracted or attractive enough for both Satan and God. And they both serve one function, both Satan and God. Once they find a potential, a candidate, that candidate needs to be tested. It's an amazing thing. Satan, for all these thousands of years, we've believed him to be evil. But that's not the case. Because when Satan goes to paradise, to heaven, God says, where you've been? Well, down there on earth. Oh, did you run into Job? Why would God ask Satan if he has seen Job? And Satan says, yes, he's a great man, isn't he? Satan sees something that God doesn't. God is naive. God doesn't know how to think. And Satan looks at God and says to him, if you really want to see your own image, in Job, let me go down there and test him. So I can bring out some of the obstacles that live inside him. God says, no, Job is faithful. Job is righteous. Job is a man without sin. Now, here's the thing about Job. Job, in fact, thinks he is a man without sin. He says, I am righteous. I am sinless. I can do no wrong. So God and Satan unite to bring Job or remove all the obstacles that live in Job. Here's the problem. What is Job addicted to, Tasha? He's addicted to his wife. He's addicted to his kids. He's addicted to his animals, to the orange and apple trees. He's also addicted to assuming that he is righteous and sinless. Are you African American? And that's the thing. Am I Persian? Am I a philosopher? The truth is, if I was to compare myself to Hafiz or Sa'di or Rumi, I don't think I'm Persian. If I was to compare myself to Socrates, I'm not a philosopher. It's this arrogance part of me that enjoys the question and enjoys the meaning. I am a philosopher. So Job has lots of things standing in his way of growth. So what does God do? God looks at Satan and says, well, you need to baptize him. Remember what Jesus says, or when John the Baptist says to the people around him, I baptize you with with water, but the guy who's going to come after him, he's going to baptize you with fire. Now, what is it that fire does and what is it that water does? I can wash this with water. The tabletop will be clean. But if I was to put this in fire, it will turn into ash. Fire is painful. And that's how Job is going to be baptized. Not with fire. They're not going to sit him down and have a conversation with him like this class. It's hands-on. Tasha, it's not enough for you to sit back there and talk about abortion. No. Have sex. Get pregnant. Understand you have no money, no education, no parents. And now, despite being a Catholic, then you sit. Now what? What the hell do I do now? The man sucks. I got no money. I got no life. Do I want to bring a life in an environment that's so punishing? Now you're tested. His animals are butchered. His trees are all cut. His wife is not touched by God or Satan. The wife comes to him and says, Mr. Job, my wonderful husband, curse God and die. And Job says, no. And here's the thing you need to understand. If my kids die, if my wife dies, I will be sad, maybe even depressed. But after a couple days, I'll be fine. You can always be sad for other people. And you have always be sad for certain things that you lose. If on the other hand, I have cancer stage 4, and I only have 4 months to live, the truth is I'm not going to recover this news after like a couple hours. My entire life is going to be examined and I won't like it. To train someone, to educate someone, you have to touch them. You know, when we were in the Middle East, we heard all these wonderful things about America and Americans, about life in America, about the American dream and all that. Then I came to America. For the first time, I saw America up close and personal. Depression, homelessness, poverty, abuse, things that didn't exist in my country. And I said to myself, really? I left my parents and my culture and my people and my land. I came all the way here for the American dream. Is this what America is? Because we don't have this in my culture. We're very poor. Okay? And all of a sudden you realize your dreams, your assumptions are now tested. And the truth is, the grade you get once you're tested, not just one F, it's like 50 Fs. So Satan goes back up to heaven and God says, did you see my favorite servant Job did not blaspheme? And Satan again looks at God and says, what are you, stupid? If you were able to look at Job, his soul, you would know that Job loves his kids, but is not attached to the kids. Let me go and touch him. And God says, fine. Don't kill him. You don't want your students to get chronically depressed. You want to train them. At the same time, you want to protect them, right? So Satan comes down and Job one morning gets up and he is sick. He looks bad. He's in pain. And you know what he does, Tasha? He doesn't say God gives and God taketh away. No. Why? Why is this happening to me? It should be happening to my neighbor, not me. He has a certain assumption about himself that people who are righteous, people who are faithful, should never be harmed by God or by Satan, because God is going to protect them. To be honest, I've forgotten your question. The story is really interesting, and I would continue with the story, but I'm a little tired now, and this story makes me angry. Long story short, I know this is Wednesday, so we won't be able to meet for the next couple of days. Forgive me, Zamir. I just tell you how the story ends. At a certain point, God looks at him and says, in very colorful language, "You fucking human beings, all you do is complain. Complain, complain, complain. Shut your mouth. Accept life. You have no power against life. Have enough faith and enough strength to survive all the shit that life throws at you. Everything happens for a purpose. Understand what that purpose is. That's your quest as a human being. Not to be happy, not to have pleasure, but to understand why life the way it is and how you need to relate to it." And you know what Job does? Job says, "Fine, I understand." And once he understands, he had one wife at the beginning of the story, now he has 25. He had one kid, now he has 55. He had one goat, now he has 50. In other words, once you really, 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 really understand, then you'll be content. It's really fucked up. I can't tell you how fucked up it is. It's just, I don't have a language for it. Zamir.
I was gonna say that the same story can be applied to just life itself. The same story, because that goes on every day for everyone individually.
Absolutely.
We're always being tested.
The only difference is the following, if I may. Most people fall victim to those stories and they can't recover. Okay? Some people, it's like, you drink for many, many years, you become an alcoholic, and then you die with regret and anger. Or your brother drinks, at a certain point stops, learns, understands, and becomes a teacher at the AA center. Why is it that two brothers from the same parents, same community, one is never educated and the other becomes a messiah?
Everybody has their own experiences.
Yeah.
They have to take, and lessons that they have to take over again.
Yeah.
Until they learn it. And they don't keep getting hit with them until they learn it. Then the door is going to open for them, just like you say. One will close.
That's the second time.
And another more will keep open.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Until you get where you need to be with God, just like you said.
Yeah.
And then there are chosen ones that could never mess up, and the Satan can keep on attacking them, and God's going to keep on always saving. Then there are those that just straight up a statement. God probably doesn't pay attention to them at all. Who knows? But my point is, you have to go through these things in order to get through life. And just like you say, if you don't understand, you'll keep on getting the same results. It's like if you cook with the same ingredients, it's going to always taste the same.
True.
It's going to always be the same. It's come out the same way.
Because it's another thing too, where it's like, God kind of like, denying me, now I'm denying you, I'll act like I don't know you, when you get to like, you trying to take the finger, you know what I mean? Like, you try to, don't talk, like, don't recognize me here on earth, otherwise you want to do something, and I'll ignore you, like, I'll act like I don't know you. So I mean, I guess there are kind of like chosen people, like people have to face, like, if that's what you believe. But I mean, I have strong faith and like Christ.
Sure, yeah.
I think that, I have to like acknowledge, and try to do the best that I can on earth. Otherwise, like he'll act like I don't know him. Like
It's true, yeah.
If I don't recognize him, he's gonna say like, who are you?
Yeah.
Are you a child of mine?
It's kind of like when end of the semester people come to my office and ask for a passing grade and I have no idea who they are.
I hear you.
There's one fourth sign. That's the Chinese signs.
Oh, it's water,
Water,
fire, earth, and air. Yeah. Isabel, where are you going? Yeah, me too. Bye. Leah? Leah, did you have anything? Okay. Well, it's good to see all of you. See you next week, Monday.
Let's see.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Zumi.